point you reach, you cross this barrier, and everything kind of goes quiet, and nothing hurts anymore. You do the last quarter mile with really not much pain because everything's so enormous, and you know your body's working so hard that you don't really feel anything. It's one of the most neatest feelings to get to, and it's nice to have athletes to push you that hard to get there.
Welcome, everyone, to beautiful Hilton Head Island in South Carolina for today's Bud Light United States Triathlon Series Championship, the premier event in the sport of triathlon. Good day, everyone. I'm John Paul Della Camera. We're here a little bit later than we thought we'd be on Hilton Head Island. That's because of the damage caused by Hurricane Hugo just about a month or so ago. While it did do some serious damage to cities north of Hilton Head Island, it left this beautiful island virtually untouched. We have the championship event today, and what's different from this event from previous events is that in order to get to Hilton Head, you must have qualified at a previous event. We'll have some of the top names in the sport of triathlon here today looking for prize money, not just the championship, but the Hilton Head purse money, and the Coke Grand Prix standings could be affected as well. We'll see some of the top triathletes, not only from this country, but also from other parts of the world as well. Working today's race with me are Carl Thomas and Mike Plant, and right now let's go to our transition area where Carl Thomas is standing by to talk about some of today's key matchups.
JP, behind me you can see the athletes assembling themselves in the transition area, some 1,200 strong, and while we've got a national championship race today, there's a larger prize at stake, the $160,000 Coke Grand Prix, $80,000 being awarded to the men and $80,000 to the women. On the women's side, a mere 23 points separate Colleen Cannon and Sylviane Puntos. Whichever of those beats the other today will win the $25,000 first place prize. On the men's side, Scott Molina virtually has first place wrapped up. Garrett McCarthy has a pretty good hold on second, but third, fourth, and fifth are very tight. And if Garrett McCarthy stumbles today, any one of four individuals could win second place. On the men's side, all the places other than Scott Molina's first place are up for grabs today. Weather conditions are ideal today, a far cry from the hurricane of 5 weeks ago. Now let's go on down to Mike Plant.
Thank you, Carl. We're down here at the swim start where conditions are absolutely perfect. The water temperature is about 68 degrees, the air temperature about 60 with an expected high in the mid-70s, absolutely perfect for racing. We will be starting momentarily. About 1,200 athletes in the field today. They will start in waves, pro men first, pro women second, and then the age groupers along. It'll take about an hour to get everybody in the water. So we'll be back in just a moment with the start of the 1989 Bud Light USTS National Championships.
The beautiful Westin Hotel on Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, the setting for today's championship event. We're all set for the swim start. Let's go down to Mike Plant.
A tough race to call today, JP. The logical choice as race favorite is Mike Pigg, of course, the two-time defending Bud Light USTS national champ. But Mike has had some physical problems this year, kind of an up-and-down season. I think we are best to look for guys like Harold Robinson, maybe Miles Stewart, who are not still recovering from late-season long-distance races.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So, who waits for starting guns in this sport? Certainly not these guys. The men's pro field is underway. They're bouncing through that shallow water. They're trying to get into deep enough water so that they can swim, fighting their way to the first buoy. Now, we've had some problems in the past here in Hilton Head with guys cutting inside that first buoy. This year, there's a lifeguard station right there and a lane line to make sure somebody doesn't cut. At this stage of the game, the pack is just sorting itself out. They're waiting for somebody to get out in front and take the lead, the guy that everybody else is going to fall behind and draft. Now, swimming has kind of changed a little bit in triathlon. The wetsuits have narrowed the gap somewhat. You can't win the race by being a good swimmer anymore, but you can sure lose it. The poor swimmers are trying to get in the middle of that pack and draft their way to the finish line. Now, among the better swimmers in today's field, Garrett McCarthy from Redondo Beach, California, Andrew Carlson, perhaps Miles Stewart we might see in the front. JP, we've got a fair start.
The men have just entered the water, and what we should see today on Hilton Head are some great swim times, and that's because of the ideal conditions here today. But you know, it wasn't so long ago, in fact, the conditions around Hilton Head Island were not so great, and Hurricane Hugo did cause some damage, as we mentioned at the top. And Carl, there was some talk that maybe the event would in fact be canceled.
Well, we looked at all the options, John Paul. Hilton Head suffered no physical damage, but just 60 miles to the north, Charleston, virtually parts of it were destroyed forever. What happened were all of the supplies, all of the personnel, medical personnel, military personnel, the police, all of the resources here on Hilton Head Island were diverted to the relief effort in Charleston. Consequently, we rescheduled the date to today, November 5, and we've got perfect weather conditions. It couldn't be better.
And the athletes, Carl, have a great course that they'll be competing on today. For a closer look at that, let's go to Mike Plant.
Like all events on the Bud Light USTS National Tour, the National Championships here at Hilton Head Island, South Carolina starts with a 1.5-kilometer swim. This one goes north to south from the Westin Hotel up there to here at the Hilton Head Beach and Tennis Club. Now the water temperature is 67, 68 degrees, a little cooler than we've seen here in the past, but as you can tell on the day before the race, the conditions are absolutely perfect. The water is flat as a board. Once again, a 1.5-kilometer swim, up the ramp, then off to the swim bike transition area at the Hilton Head Beach and Tennis Resort. The second event, as always, is the 40-kilometer bike ride. The cyclists head out from the Beach and Tennis Club, out Folly Field Road, out Highway 278, through Hilton Head Plantation, back onto the highway, then out and back across the two bridges that connect Hilton Head Island with the mainland. It's as flat and fast a course as you'll find, with the exception, as you see, of the bridges, which are the closest thing to hills we're going to find here in Hilton Head. Now, Mike Pigg has won the national championship the last 2 years on the bike ride. 3 weeks ago, however, he did the Bud Light Ironman in Hawaii, and the question is, are his legs going to be strong enough to win it again on the bike here this year? The final event is the 10K run from the bike run transition area at the Beach and Tennis Resort to the finish line just in front of the Westin Hotel. It's an interesting cross-country style course with lots of varying terrain, from asphalt and concrete to fairway grass. There's some rough footing here, and that will play to the advantage of runners who have had cross-country competitive experience in high school and college, as many of the athletes in tomorrow's race have. It's also the kind of course where the leader can get out of sight of the athletes behind and steal the race. That's something a guy like Mike Pigg is going to be hoping to do tomorrow. After almost 5 minutes of swimming, we still have no clear leader in the men's field. The pack is all together. Now, the ideal conditions we talked about earlier have moderated somewhat. A late wind came up just before the start and created somewhat of a chop. The athletes are still swimming with the current. The water temperature is ideal, nice and cool. That'll be fast, but this chop will slow things down somewhat. Back down the beach about a half mile, the women's pro field is all set to get underway.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
And like the men, somewhat of another false start, and the women once again struggling through that shallow water. Watch them go now. This dolphining technique is the only way to deal efficiently with the shallow water. Colleen Cannon in the red swim cap getting a real good start. There is a lot on the line for these women today. Colleen Cannon and Sylvian Puntos in that neck-and-neck battle for the Coke Grand Prix. Our race coverage continues in a moment.
And welcome back, everyone, to Hilton Head Island. This is the Bud Light USTS Hilton Head Championship event. We're near the end of the men's swim start. Mike, is there any clear leader established yet?
Well, JP, late in the swim, one man did get out in front. I'm not sure quite who he is at the moment. We'll see in just a second. But the pack is terribly together. This is going to be a tight finish. A lot of people coming up the ramp all at the same time. But we do have one man out in front, about 15, 20 yards or so. And that's 22-year-old Andrew Carlson from Laguna Beach, California. This is Andrew's first year as a pro. As a matter of fact, really, it's only his second month as a pro. It's an interesting story, and interesting that he comes out of the water first. He's a former champion swimmer with the Mission Viejo Matadors, and his first pro race was in San Diego on September 10th. He was second to Scott Molina. So Andrew Carlson being out here in the lead makes for a very, very interesting beginning to this race. But only seconds, of course, as we can see behind Andrew, comes the entire men's pro field. I saw Garrett McCarthy go by there, Steve Fitch, Harold Robinson, Miles Stewart. There's Dave Scott. Boy, I'll tell you, this is going to be a dogfight out there on the bike course.
And just off the beach, a quiet transition area begins to heat up, Mike, as the first of more than 1,200 athletes runs to his bike.
So this is Andrew Carlson. I mentioned the interesting story, a fine swimmer, but also a tremendous runner. Andrew Carlson had never finished a pro race before the San Diego USTS on September 10th, and he shocked everybody, really beat an awful lot of good guys by coming in second to Scott Molina. So Andrew Carlson is the story. And as I mentioned, right behind Andrew, there's Garrett McCarthy. Now, Garrett's interesting. He's second place on the Coke Grand Prix right now, but he missed the chance to lock up second place in San Diego on September 10th. He finished 14th in that race. Very uncharacteristic for him. So he's put himself on the line here. Harold Robinson, who you can see just leaving right now, as a matter of fact, has a chance to catch Garrett if Garrett has a bad race. Scott Molina, the four-time Bud Light USTS national champion, as Carl mentioned earlier, has gone into this race with a lock on the Coke Grand Prix. Man, this is tight in here. Mike Pigg heading out right now. That's about a normal swim finish for Mike Pigg, but there are so many guys around him. His strategy, of course, as it has been here at Hilton Head in the past, is to get out on the bike, forge a big lead so we can hold on the run. But I'll tell you, he's got his work cut out for him this morning. And among the men, of course, who are expected to give Mike his biggest competition today, Miles Stewart from Australia, Harold Robinson from California, and who knows who else in this field. So the men are safely out onto Highway 278, heading for the turnaround just over the end of the island. It's a flat bike course, as we mentioned earlier in the course review. Our current leader, Brett Rose, but only for a second. This is Harold Robinson coming up on the outside of Brett, riding a strange-looking bike. That's called a Trimble. Those things are handmade by a fella in Massachusetts, as a matter of fact, named Trimble. Harold swears by the bike. It's supposed to be more aerodynamic and a little better mechanically than some of the other bikes. A lot of changing of the lead going on early on in the race. Garrett McCarthy coming up on the outside. That's a good sign for Garrett. He's riding aggressively right now. He's had a very, very difficult late season. Had that bobble in San Diego, raced poorly in Sacramento the week after that. So it's good to see him riding well here today. So JP and Carl, at the moment, Harold Robinson and Garrett McCarthy are fighting for the lead.
The men came out of the water in a bunch, and that's the way they are pretty much in the bike course, Carl. Any surprises so far in the early going?
Well, 15 men came out of the water within 30 seconds of each other. Notably, not among them, Scott Molina. Scott apparently did not get into that first pack coming out of the water, and he's got some ground to make up.
Well, as the women are ready to emerge from the water, let's go back now to Mike Plant.
Our first woman out of the water, JP, is going to be Bonnie Dirty from Venice, California. That's really no surprise at all. Bonnie, as a matter of fact, is the holder of several World Masters swimming titles, endurance, long-distance swimming in the pool. So she's well used to being in front. And obviously she's also well used to being in the waves, using those little tiny small waves to speed her up the beach. Bonnie, an excellent swimmer, a first-year pro. I don't expect her to stay in the lead for very long. She's had some top 10 finishes this year, but in a field like this today, I have a feeling we've seen the best of Bonnie Dirty's day. In second place, Heidi Keller, another fine swimmer who will probably not finish in the top 10 today. The real race is behind Heidi as they come up the beach. Matter of fact, there they are right now. Joy Hansen in third place, Jan Ripple right behind her. It looks like Susan Latshaw. We can see Sylvian Puntos in the yellow striped wetsuit, and then kind of leaping over the small wavelets there, Colleen Cannon, a veritable who's who of women world-class triathletes. What a race. This Hilton Head event is so big every year, and it's certainly not disappointing this year. Heading toward the bike racks once again. That's Joy Hansen just ahead. Jan Ripple to the left. Sylvian Puntos really coming up hard behind. Everybody knows that there is a lot on the line. Jan Ripple is the woman really on the edge today. She knows that what she has to do is ride a very Mike Pigg-like race. That means get out in front on the bike and stay there. Oh, and look at this. Look at Sylvian Puntos and Colleen Cannon changing right next to each other in the bike racks. Now, the difference between them is so small in the Coke Grand Prix right now, but the eventual difference at the finish line is huge. $5,000 will separate first and second place. So Jan Ripple heads out, hoping for that big lead. And right behind her, Joy Hansen, there's Colleen Cannon, and Sylvian Puntos is right on Colleen Cannon's wheel. Boy, I'll tell you, something else. Just like the men, the women are shoulder to shoulder.
And as the women hit the highway, let's turn our attention to the other side of Hilton Head Island where the men's bike race is underway. Let's go back to Mike.
Thanks, JP. Is it ever underway? Look at Miles Stewart go, blasting on the outside into the lead. Just 18 years old from a place, believe it or not, called Surfers Paradise in Australia. Miles was fourth at the World Triathlon Championships in Avignon, France on August 6th, the vanguard of a youth movement in Australia that threatens the American dominance of this sport. The U.S. athletes might have invented triathlon, but I'll tell you, the Australians are coming hard.
And the action will continue from Hilton Head Island in just a moment.
Welcome back, everyone, to Hilton Head Island for our Bud Light USTS Championship. We're in the stretch drive right now of the men's bike course. And, Carl, right now it looks like you could use a scorecard just to see who the new faces are.
The surprising thing, John Paul, is the fact that Mike Pigg has not pulled away in his normal fashion. But among the leaders, Miles Stewart, he has a USTS win under his belt this season. And Tom Gallagher, while never having won a USTS event for the past 2 or 3 years, has consistently been in the top 5.
Back on the bike course, Mike Pigg is sure giving it his best shot. He's gone into the lead past Miles Stewart and is out in front. Look at the style on this guy. This is not classical cycling style, but it's powerful. Mike Pigg kind of rewrote the book on how to ride a bike in triathlon. Look at him far forward on the edge of his seat, really riding out there almost as if he's running. Behind him, Miles Stewart looking a little bit more composed. All Miles needs to do, he thinks, I'm sure, is to keep Mike Pigg in sight and then run him down. So we'll see. Mike Pigg trying to break away. Miles Stewart in close to second place. You can see from behind that the field has not broken up. Harold Robinson staying tight, and look at Tom Gallagher go. Tom Gallagher from Long Beach. He's a big guy, real strong. Tom, as a matter of fact, just shot into second place behind Mike Pigg. He's a full-time chiropractic student, so he's had a little trouble getting time to train this year. Tom Gallagher coming on very strong in the late season and is now in second place. And the lead and the positions behind the lead changing back and forth almost every few yards. This is Jimmy Riccatello. Jimmy, one of the best cyclists in the sport. Not a strong runner, although he's been working on that for years. And oh my goodness. Look at how close these guys are riding. Now, Mike Pigg is still in the lead at this point, I think, but the group behind him is tightly packed, too tightly packed for my taste, I'll tell you. The vehicle that you see just to the left of the cyclist there is a drafting marshal on a motorcycle, and these guys are really riding the edge. I'm surprised. Now, this is a flat course, and it doesn't tend to break the cyclists up, but there are rules that require these guys to ride 2 bike lengths behind each other, and I'll tell you, if that's 2 bike lengths, well, I'll tell you, we're thinking differently. In the women's field, Jan Ripple looks like she's been able to do what she hoped to do, and that is break into a big lead. She's left the rest of the field behind. Jan Ripple, a mother of 3, 33 years old from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a very strong athlete, has had a tremendous year this year. She's won 3 USTS events, finished second to Erin Baker at the World Championships. Unfortunately, she's been run down from behind by several of the women in today's field. Susan Latshaw currently riding in second place. Right behind Susan Latshaw, Colleen Cannon. Joy Hansen is in that group, as well as Sylvian Puntos. And it's interesting to watch the women ride. They're in a group as well, but they seem to be remembering the anti-drafting rules that the men seem to be forgetting. We'll be back.
Back here on Hilton Head Island, we're looking at the men approaching the stretch drive of the bike course. And the biggest surprise so far is that Mike Pigg has not opened up the usual big lead on the bike. Positions 1, 2, and 3, Mike Plant, are awful close together.
Well, to tell you the truth, positions 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are awful close together. But our leader, and it is a surprise, is Tom Gallagher from Long Beach. Now, Tom is interesting. He's 5 feet 10, almost 180 pounds. He's a big, strong guy, and a flat bike course like we have in Hilton Head certainly plays to his advantage. And Mike Pigg just coming in second place. That's a very unfamiliar place for Mike Pigg here at Hilton Head. The last 2 years he's been off the bike, a minute and a half in the lead or more. Right next to him, Jimmy Riccatello. As Thomas Gallagher runs out looking for the way to go. This is an unfamiliar place for Tom, too. He's in the lead in the national championship. What a race. Mike Pigg still struggling with his shoes. And off he goes. Right on his heels, Jimmy Riccatello having the race of his life. And in fourth place, Miles Stewart. Oh, my goodness. And you know, it's interesting. I couldn't help but look at Mike Pigg there and note that he looked almost nonchalant. Usually in the transition area, Mike is furious. He's got these wild eyes. He's just looking crazy. And he just ran out there as if it has been a long season and he's waiting for it to end. I don't know. That is very uncharacteristic of Mike Pigg. Now the second group of cyclists is at the bike racks. Among this group, look at it. There must be 20 guys here. This is incredible. Scott Molina, 4-time Bud Light USTS national champion. The only guy to have ever won that title before Mike Pigg took it away from him in 1987 is way behind at this stage. He's got a lot of ground to make up. Keep in mind, though, that he has that 25 grand in his pocket from the Coke Grand Prix already, so it doesn't even matter where he's finishing today for that. So Scott Molina heads out, and Carl and JP, we expected a tight race. We've got one.
I'm surprised right now that Mike Pigg doesn't have the lead on the run. He's usually there. How does this affect the entire race, Carl?
Well, typically Mike Pigg tries to put as much time as he can on the bike ride between himself and the entire field. He was not able to do that today, and this year he has had trouble doing that. So I think at this point, as close as it is, JP, it's really anybody's race.
And on the women's side, Jan Ripple has opened up a clear lead on the bike. Let's get an update now as they approach the transition area with Mike Plant.
JP, she does have a clear lead, almost a minute and a half, which is exactly the time that she said earlier she needed to come off the bike and run with.
I would feel pretty comfortable with just a minute and a half. I know I've had a minute and a half before and I've gotten caught at the 5-mile mark. But the way I'm running right now, I feel like that would be plenty of room for me this time. On the bike, you can see the girls coming back as you're heading home. But that's not as significant as the run. If you have a lead going into the run, they may never know where you're at.
Our second place rider at the moment, Susan Latshaw from Berkeley, California. Susan, just 3 weeks ago, was 5th at the Ironman in Hawaii, so she's got to have a pair of tired legs, or potentially tired legs anyway. And look at in third place, Sylvian Puntos, and riding right behind her, we can see the red cap of Colleen Cannon. Sylvian, one of the most durable and consistent performers this sport has ever seen. Twice second at the Ironman, twice a winner at the Ironman, and the original USTS champion back in 1983. She's not quite as aggressive a rider as some of the other women. Her strength is the run. Oh, and look at Joy Hansen go. Little Joy Hansen, 5 feet 3, 100 pounds or so, pushing those little 24-inch wheels. She's a runner. In striking contrast to the style of Jan Ripple, Joy Hansen is saving her legs for the final event. And on the run course, Miles Stewart has moved into a commanding lead. Isn't this something? So he's up by 45 seconds, leaving Jimmy Riccatello, Mike Pigg, Tom Gallagher behind. Miles Stewart, again, just 18 years old from Surfers Paradise in Australia, has moved himself right to the top of the sport in just 1 year.
And some of the top women are nearing the end of the bike course. Jan Ripple still has the lead, but Mike Plant, I wonder, is that lead what you wanted?
Well, we'll see. She does have a commanding lead. It's funny how Jan was talking about a minute-and-a-half lead that she needed. Mike Pigg in previous years also talked about a minute-and-a-half lead that he needed. Jan has had that kind of lead before and lost it, so we'll see. She said earlier that she's running very well at this time of year, and indeed she is. I gotta believe, though, that she's tired after the long season, so it remains to be seen. You know, Jan, interestingly enough, at the bike racks in the transition area, is never one of the calmer athletes. She always seems totally confused. She's always asking where to go, how to go, where her shoes are. I think really what that says is that her mind is so totally into the race. Off she goes, Jan Ripple, trying to hold the lead in the national championships.
With the women on the run, we see Jan Ripple taking the lead, and we've seen that before, Carl, but in the past, she's had a problem holding on. Can she hold on today in Hilton Head?
I don't know, John Paul, but I hearken back to Chicago last July. Jan Ripple had the lead, and lo and behold, in the final couple of furlongs, there were the Puntos twins. Both Patricia and Sylviane ran Jan down in Chicago.
Now, the story within the story. The Coke Grand Prix standings right now at shoulder-to-shoulder between Colleen Cannon and Sylviane Puntos.
I mentioned that at the top of the show. $25,000 in the Croke Grand Prix on the line today. It's virtually a match race. Sylviane and Colleen.
You're going to see some beautiful sights now on Hilton Head Island. The golf courses are part of the scenery as we go back to the men on the run with Mike.
Yeah, JP, and Miles Stewart gets to see it all first. He's still holding a commanding lead and looking very strong indeed. We'll be back from Hilton Head.
Back to Hilton Head Island, a little game of hide and seek here as everyone looks for the leader on the golf course, and it continues to be Miles Stewart. Let's go back to Mike.
Well, JP, I'm not sure if anybody is going to find Miles Stewart today. He is seeking a national championship, and he's got that radar tuned in. Boy, he looks good. Wow, and in second place, still Jimmy Riccatello. He's run away from Mike Pigg and Tom Gallagher. That's got to be a surprise. Jim is not known for his running ability, but, well, he's looking strong today.
As the men are nearing the finish line, we're hearing reports now that Joy Hansen is gaining ground on the leader, Jan Ripple, so we'll keep our eye on that. But on the men's side, let's get back there, Carl. Who are some of these strange faces we're seeing?
Well, who we're not seeing is Scott Molina, is Mike Pigg, is Dave Scott. Who we are seeing are very good triathletes. Miles Stewart, Jim Riccatello, and Harold Robinson have all notched regular season Bud Light USTS victories, and each is having the race of their life today.
Back on the run course, Miles Stewart holding his lead and looking very good at doing that. He's aided by really comfortable temperatures. We've had some terrible heat at Hilton Head before and terrible humidity. Miles looking very strong, though. He looks back to check the progress of Jimmy Riccatello, and he looks back almost with ease. Miles is running well within himself right now, is fully in control of the race. Jimmy Riccatello is doing wonderfully. When he burst onto the triathlon scene in 1985 with a second place to Scott Tinley at the Phoenix Bud Light USTS, Tinley was so surprised he looked at Jimmy and said, "Who are you?" Jimmy's been struggling with his run ever since, and it looks like finally, after 4 years, he's putting it all together. And in third place, Tom Gallagher, and right behind him, Harold Robinson in a foot race for third place. Now, Harold is the better runner of the two, and the size and the strength that played to Tom Gallagher's advantage earlier on in the bike ride is going to work against him in the closing stages of the run here.
And as we approach the men's finish, Miles Stewart is a half mile away from a championship, Mike.
JP, he is indeed. The USTS has never had a non-US national champion before. As a matter of fact, it's only had two. Scott Molina for 4 years, then Mike Pigg for 2 more years. But Miles Stewart is going to do it today. Interestingly, his first race of this season in the US was at the Chicago USTS. He placed 10th. I talked to his dad, Colin, after that race, and I congratulated him on Miles's finish, and his dad said, "No, you know, he should have won." And I thought, oh yeah, another one of these guys. His kid's going to win every race. But then the very next week, Miles went out and won the USTS race in New England, and from that point on, he's been at the very top. An amazing athlete, a cocky guy who likes to talk about himself, but as he says, he never says anything that he doesn't do. Miles Stewart, he will become the 1989 Bud Light USTS national champion. At 18 years old, he's the youngest guy ever to win this title. Once again, the first non-U.S. athlete ever to be here at the finish line in Hilton Head in first place. A little showboat at the finish line for Miles Stewart. What the heck? When you're 18, you can do that.
18-year-old Australian. Puts it to the Americans.
And in second place, boy, here's a happy man. Jimmy Riccatello finally breaking through with a wonderful race. In third place for the second year in a row, Harold Robinson. And you know, Harold and Jimmy were down there in the Coke Grand Prix. I don't see Garrett McCarthy. They have a strong chance of moving way, way up. In fourth place from Brazil, what a surprise, Leandro Macedo. Isn't that something? And Tom Gallagher now in fifth, losing 2 places there in that last, 3/4 of a mile or so. Still, Tom's got to be very happy with a tremendous performance today. Tom Gallagher in fifth.
Give me another one. I don't know those gentlemen.
In our sixth place finisher, wow, Lewis Murphy Jr. Lewis Murphy coming from way behind in the bike ride to finish 6th overall. Great run.
Well, you've seen the top 6 men's finishers. Let's go out back to the golf course, see how the women are doing. Jan Ripple, Mike, still having that lead.
Yeah, she's holding on desperately right now. Looking real good, I must admit, looking strong. You can see, though, the short strides. Jan certainly is feeling the effects of having a long, long season and also feeling the effects of that hard bike ride. We talked about those big gears that she uses. Really takes a lot out of her legs. Jan Ripple running for the national championship. She's been second here in Hilton Head before. Never won it, though. Looking behind a little bit desperately. You know, you kind of want really plugging for Jan to come through. But I'll tell you, here's a threat. Joy Hansen has passed Colleen Cannon, Sylvian Puntos, and now just passed Susan Latshaw and is in second place. Now, Joy is an interesting story. In 1979, she was an All-American cross-country runner at the University of Arizona. This course plays to her strengths. Interesting. We'll be back. Jan Ripple from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, still in the lead at the USTS National Championships. She's looking tired, but she's also looking pretty strong. Jan was second to Erin Baker at the World Triathlon Championships. Joy Hansen running real hard in second place. She's left Susan Latshaw far behind. I can't even see Susan back there. Joy Hansen, as we mentioned earlier, an All-American cross-country runner at the University of Arizona. Look at this. This is maybe a little signal to those runners who feel triathletes are not true, athletes. Look at this lady go. On her toes, looking real sharp. She's got her sights set on Jan Ripple. Whether she has enough room or not, we can't tell. But this is the way to run after riding 25 miles in a triathlon. And in fourth place, Sylvian Puntos. And Colleen Cannon is in a little bit of trouble right now. Remember that whichever one beats the other is going to win the Coke Grand Prix. And Sylvian Puntos has started to put some distance, plenty of distance, between herself and Colleen Cannon. Colleen Cannon's out of contact, and I think she's got to feel as if it may be a lost cause. Oh my goodness, look at this. Joy Hansen has closed on Jan Ripple. And this is probably a silly thing to say, but the race for first place at this stage of the game is over. There's no way that Jan Ripple at this point is going to be able to hold off Joy Hansen. I wouldn't give her much of a chance of it anyway. Joy, like an experienced cross-country runner, is just hanging back there, letting Jan do a lot of the work, just biding her time, setting her pace a little bit. You notice she's backed off just a hair. She knows how to run this distance. She's got better leg speed than Jan Ripple does. Kind of a tough break for Jan Ripple. I don't think after this long season, I would like to be Jan running and hearing those footsteps in the back of her ear. Stride for stride right now. We're just about a half mile left to go in the race. There's got to be a time here when Joy's going to make her move. I don't think she was going to let it come down to those last 25. No, as a matter of fact, there we go right there. Joy Hansen making a break going by Jan Ripple. Look at her pick up her arms, pick up her legs again. The experience really tells right now, and also telling is the fact that Joy looks much fresher than Jan Ripple. Jan's struggling hard to stay close, but Joy gradually, you can see around that corner, pulling away a little bit. Now, tough spot for Jan Ripple. She has to once again keep herself together to avoid losing second place now that she's lost third. In her mind, surely, is the fact that Sylvian Puntos and Colleen Cannon are somewhere behind her. Tough spot for Jan Ripple. Hansen is really an interesting story. We mentioned the All-American cross-country runner at Arizona. She was also in 1982 a U.S. national modern pentathlon champion, was 5th in the world that year. And in addition to that, Joy Hansen in 1986 was racing very well, was at the very top of the professional rankings when she suffered a nervous breakdown. Quite serious, really. She was hospitalized for a while and had to work her way back into triathlon. She's come back all the way. She won a couple of big races. Now she's on her way to winning the national championship. And additionally, this year, she had to deal with the death of her mother in September. So this is a woman who has had to deal with adversity. She has dealt with it very well indeed. She's running again for the national championship. Jan Ripple is nowhere near able to catch her at this stage. Joy Hansen looking real good.
Great job.
Joy, a personal professional trainer, an individual trainer. They call them personal trainers in Los Angeles. All the stars have them. Well, that's what Joy does in her hometown in Pennsylvania. Her winner's share today, $4,000 of the $30,000 purse. Joy Hansen. And in second place, again, probably the best second place finisher the sport has ever seen, Jan Ripple, 33 years old, her mother at 3. Oh boy. What you have there is a portrait in fatigue and disappointment. Jan had hoped that the year would end with a win here. It almost did. Close, but not close enough. And in third place, Susan Latshaw. A great performance after that 5th place at the Ironman 3 weeks ago. And look at Jan Ripple.
So Susan Latshaw,
oh boy.
What a great job by Susan Latshaw.
Tough day. In 4th place, Sylvian Puntos. And that looks like Sylvian Puntos is going to be the winner of the Coke Grand Prix. $25,000 in her pocket. Colleen Cannon just didn't quite have enough today. She ends up in 5th. Well, you win some and you lose some. I'm sure that's Colleen's attitude. Once again, Sylvian Puntos, 2-time winner of the Ironman in Hawaii, twice second in Hawaii, and the original USTS champion, 4th today here in Hilton. And Colleen 5th. A great race in a tough field.
We've seen some exciting races today here on Hilton Head Island, and on the women's side, Joy Hansen overtaking Jan Ripple was a big story. Carl, you were speculating earlier as to whether or not Jan Ripple could hold that lead.
Well, this cross-country course is tailor-made for Joy Hansen, and on a given day, she is without question the best runner in the field, and today was her day. Also on the women's side, as we noted earlier, Colleen Cannon and Sylvian Puntos. Sylvian crossed the line first today, Colleen right behind her on her shoulder. However, when the points were all sorted out, Colleen won the Coke Grand Prix, the $25,000 purse. Sylvian was second, $20,000, 3 points separated the two. On the men's side, what can you say? 18-year-old Miles Stewart from Australia had the race of his life today. Jimmy Riccatello finally cracked into that top 3 at the national championship. A terrific day for him, and Harold Robinson was 3rd. And on the men's side of the Coke Grand Prix, as he stated was his objective at the very first race of the season, Scott Molina in a runaway. Scott is a 1989 Coke Grand Prix champion, $25,000 winner. All in all, a terrific day.
And hopefully still a terrific day for our age groupers. Right now we have a very special person we would like to profile, Jennifer Kingsley.
25-year-old Jennifer Kingsley is lucky to be alive, let alone racing as part of a relay team at the national championships. 6 years ago, her body was so shattered in a Hilton Head car crash that she was declared dead at the scene. She spent a day and a half in a coma.
It's pretty vague. I had bruised my brain in the car accident, so I was really not aware of what was going on or who I was or where I was. They kept questioning me and asking me, Jennifer, who's the president? And I'd say, George Washington. So I had a president. I was just a little out of date. I started realizing, and it was in the middle of the night, I woke up and I realized I couldn't feel my legs.
Her recovery was long and painful. For a while, she was almost totally dependent upon her friends and family, and her brother Greg, 2 years her senior, assumed a new importance in her life.
my brother would, he'd have to carry me downstairs and put me on the couch, and that was it. You know, if I wanted to go to the bathroom, hey Greg, come pick me up and take me to the bathroom, or I'd have a walker at home. But I couldn't change the channel on the television set. I couldn't get up and change a simple channel on the television set. You know, a lot of people felt sorry for me, and that was the last thing I wanted. I hated somebody trying to help me. Not that I didn't appreciate it, but I wanted to do it myself, and that's how my brother treated me. He didn't treat me as if I was any different. He didn't treat me, you know, poor Jennifer.
Greg was Jennifer's rock, her cheerleader. But then the tables turned. She was almost fully recovered when the family learned that Greg had leukemia.
It was devastating. I was in the room. I knew before he did, and it was devastating. And then when they told him, which was maybe a few hours later, I was in the room with them, and they looked at him and said, "We don't expect. You know, we've had people live up to 3 years." And he just looked at me, and you know, he looked at 3 years. You mean you're telling me I'm going to live 3 years? You know, I'm not ready to die yet. I'm not, you know, I want children. I mean, all these things went through his mind, and you know, tears rolled down his face and mine as well. And immediately, the first thing we thought is we have to transfer him to another hospital. This can't be.
It couldn't be, but it was. With Jennifer now playing the roles of confidant and motivator, Greg fought the disease into remission. For 2.5 years, he underwent maintenance chemotherapy as he worked himself into better and better shape, and even talked about doing triathlons. But finally, as the doctors said he would, he relapsed. He died on December 11th, 1988. But his spirit lives on, in and through his sister. Jennifer is wearing Greg's yellow bandana in his memory. He helped her come a long way back. Now she carries his memory across a finish line he didn't live to see.
That was a very touching and inspirational story on one of our age groupers, Jennifer Kingsley. Carl, we're hearing some reports now that the unofficial results, granted they weren't official, but now we're hearing that they may not even be close to what's actually happened here on Hilton Head.
Well, it's speculation at this point, John Paul, but among that group of men leaders on the bike course, the thought is that there was some drafting out there, or maybe some other riding violations. The Tri-Fed officials, the marshals on motorcycles, as we've seen throughout the day, were there, have probably made calls, although we don't know exactly what they are. Let's go to Mike Plant right now for an update.
Carl and JP, I'm down here at the finish line where the late finishers are still crossing. We're beginning to hear, however, that a magnificent victory by Miles Stewart may not be a magnificent victory at all. We are awaiting an announcement that's supposed to come any time. I'll let you know.
Well, it's been a wild day here on Hilton Head Island. Some news of disqualifications. The results that we gave you, although they were unofficial, are now different than what was announced. There was a hastily called news conference held right after the event, and right now let's go to that news conference.
Well, as far as we know, there is a new order of finish for the race today. There was it was a very competitive race, and there was a lot of exuberance among the athletes out there, and there were some rules infractions and violations on the course. Some of those resulted in time penalties, and some resulted in disqualifications. We're in the process right now of compiling the new list based on that. As a result of the very highly competitive nature of the field, two major packs of riders formed. And within those two packs, there was some jostling around for space. This is out of the bicycle. These rules infractions all occurred on the bicycle portion, yes.
But the rules infractions were only on the men's side. On the women's side, the results stand, and Joy Hansen had one terrific race. She is the national champion here on Hilton Head Island. Hansen was number 1, Jen Ripple 2. On the national championship for men, the winner, Mike, is Lewis Murphy Jr.
Yeah, and I think it's only fair to say, JP, that not all of the DQs were due to drafting. Jimmy Riccatello, particularly one of the cleanest riders in the sport, was DQ'd for riding outside the cones. Drafting is a funny issue. It's been around a long time. It does not seem to have been resolved to either the athletes or the officials' satisfaction. We talked about drafting back in 1987. The best way to think about drafting is to imagine that each cyclist is surrounded by a zone. The zone being 3 feet to either side and 2 bike lengths behind. Now, if I'm passing another cyclist, I have a couple of options. First of all, I can avoid the zone altogether, and also a possible penalty by simply coming up on the outside. My second option is to actually intersect the zone, is to come through the zone. I have 15 seconds with which to make that pass. Otherwise, I'm liable to be penalized for drafting. 15 seconds with which to put my front tire in front of the other cyclist's front tire. As soon as I do that, that other cyclist has to drop out of my zone. So not only have I passed, but I've also acted strategically. I've forced the other cyclist into making a move.
A couple of examples of what Mike just explained. The third rider comes up and instead of passing, decides to sit there and take advantage of the draft or the slipstream.
Seeing everybody? Passing situation.
In this example, the rider comes up and instead of waiting, goes right on between the riders. That's a legal pass.
Mike, you were down at the finish line. What was the attitude and the reaction of those people involved in this controversy?
JP, I don't think there was any surprise. The athletes who were penalized, of course, were terribly upset. They lost a lot of money. But the athletes who weren't penalized were saying privately that they were surprised and pleasantly surprised that the Federation would take such strong action in such an important event.
Well, I think that's important, Mike, because the Federation here, as the sport moves into its second decade, credibility and integrity are key. And as we think about the Olympic movement and all of the things that will mean to the sport of triathlon, drafting is the single most important issue, and it's the National Federation's job to address it, and I think they will.
Stay with us. When we come back, we'll have today's official race results. And here on Hilton Head Island, it was a banner day for Joy Hansen, Mike. She is our national women's champion.
Yeah, and a national champion now in 3 sports. What an athlete, Joy Hansen.
And on the men's side, a bit of a surprise after all the controversy, but it's Lewis Murphy Jr.
Yeah, living in Tallahassee, Florida, a native of Vancouver, Canada.
And the next thing you're going to see is a lot of the winners in the age group categories. Obviously too numerous to mention, but it's not all prize money. That's what the pros are going for, but the age groupers have something else to look forward to.
A lot of pride out here today, JP. 1,200 athletes, all of whom had to qualify to get to the national championship. So this was no easy thing, and the people who won, who placed in the top 5 and won awards, are spectacular triathletes, some of the best in the world, literally, at their particular age groups. Jody Schmidt here from Downingtown, Pennsylvania, a former pro, now moved up to the 30 to 34. As a matter of fact, she's a world champion. And the other age groups as they go, 22 age divisions in all. Sid Smith, a 4-time Bud Light USTS national champion. Jane Snyder, also a world champion, placed first in the World Championships in Avignon, France, right along with the pros they raced, which was kind of neat.
And it's interesting to know how high the age groups get up here and the fact that they not only start the race but also finish it. It's a good sign.
Well, it's not a question of even finishing it anymore with these people. We have athletes 70 and over who are superb triathletes in their own right, race head-to-head against each other. They know the different athletes in their age category all over the country, so the competition is fierce all the way on up. Ethel Lotterino is one of them. Now, she's a 4-time national champion and, again, a world champion. Excellent athlete.
It's certainly not just a young person's sport.